The first time I realized my life was about to shift into something I could never have imagined, I was standing outside the glass doors of the upscale corporate building I had dreamed of working in for years, holding a rumpled folder, a half-broken pencil, and the kind of hope that comes only after life has knocked you down so many times that standing up feels like a miracle. It was early morning, sunlight hitting the windows in long, sharp streaks that made the building look almost heavenly. Yet my heart was pounding with the weight of reality. I was a single father trying to catch his breath, struggling to keep rent paid, bills handled, lunch boxes packed, and a little 6-year-old boy reassured that everything was somehow going to be okay. I never imagined that a single sentence spoken by my intimidating, impossibly composed boss would flip my entire world upside down. I never imagined that agreeing to pretend to be someone's husband, especially a woman I had only known for 3 weeks, would become the most terrifying and beautiful decision of my life. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that show how unpredictable life can be, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Everyday Kindness. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories to you. The day I first walked into that office, I had nothing but determination holding me together. My name is Aaron Solis, and at 29, I had already lived more lifetimes than most. My son, Jace, had been my entire world since his mother left 2 years ago, with no explanation, no note, no forwarding address. For months he asked where she went, and for months I answered with the same gentle lie, that she loved him but needed time. The truth was far darker, but Jace was too soft, too pure, too full of wonder for that. So I became both parents, both light and shield, and every job I took, every step I climbed, was for him. Which is why, even though I felt underqualified for a position at Arklin Industries, I accepted the interview and walked in with my chin lifted and my heart whispering, "Try, Aaron, just try." My boss, Kira Alwyn, was the kind of woman who intimidated anyone within a 3-meter radius. She carried herself with an elegance that made people straighten their backs without realizing it. Her voice was calm in a way that hinted she never needed to raise it to be heard. Her eyes, a deep, stormy gray, scanned rooms as though she was measuring everything: strengths, weaknesses, secrets. Rumor had it she was ice, emotionless, all business. But behind all that composure was something deeply human, something wounded, though I couldn't see the details yet. During the interview, she assessed me not by my resume, but by my posture, my tone, my honesty. She asked why I needed this job, and without thinking, without hiding, I told her the truth. I told her about Jace. I told her about the months I spent picking up handyman shifts, night cleaning work, warehouse hours, anything that kept us afloat. I told her that I didn't want pity. I wanted a chance to earn something real. She didn't smile, didn't tilt her head, didn't offer the slightest sympathy. She simply looked at me, nodded once, and told me to start Monday. For 3 weeks, I learned to navigate the storm of paperwork, schedules, contracts, presentations, and constant demands. I learned her patterns, her silences, her strictness. She rarely spoke about herself, and though I was curious, I respected her boundaries. But one day, one completely normal Tuesday morning, she walked into my small office, closed the door behind her, and stood in front of me with a stillness that made me uneasy. Then she dropped the sentence that changed everything. She needed someone to pose as her husband for a year, not a boyfriend, not a partner, a husband. At first I thought I misheard. I stared at her, feeling my heartbeat in my ears, wondering if I was on some sort of hidden camera prank show. But the seriousness in her expression, the tightness in her jaw, the exhaustion in her eyes told me this was real. Something was happening in her world that she wasn't sharing with anyone, something that required a deception so bold and so strange that only desperation could justify it. As she explained the situation, an inheritance battle, her estranged relatives trying to seize control of her mother's estate, a legal clause requiring her to show family stability, I felt torn between disbelief and sympathy. She wasn't cold, not anymore. She was vulnerable, frightened, and trying to hold herself together. I saw the cracks in her armor for the first time. She didn't threaten my job. She didn't demand obedience. She simply offered an arrangement. She would pay for Jace's schooling, cover my rent for the year, and triple my salary if I agreed. We would attend events as a married couple, share a home for appearances, never reveal the truth, and maintain clear boundaries. It was insane. It was reckless. It was impossible. But rent was due in 5 days. Jace needed stability, and opportunities like this didn't appear twice. So I said yes. I said yes even though my voice trembled. I said yes even though my mind screamed at me. I said yes because, in that moment, I didn't see a powerful CEO. I saw a woman sinking quietly, begging for someone to pull her above the surface, and somehow I became that someone. Moving into her penthouse was like stepping into another world. Glass walls opened to wide city views. Sunlight filled every corner with warmth, and polished marble floors reflected our hesitations. The space felt too elegant for someone like me, too silent, too pristine. Jace clung to my hand, his small fingers tightening every time he discovered something new. A glass sculpture, a grand piano, a rooftop garden bigger than our old apartment combined. But Kira surprised me that day. She knelt down, met my son at eye level, and spoke to him softly as though she genuinely cared about earning his trust. She showed him a playroom she had prepared in advance, complete with books, puzzles, and soft blankets. She didn't have to do that, yet she did. The first night, I stood awkwardly near the master bedroom door, unsure how to proceed. The arrangement meant that sharing a bed would be expected by anyone visiting or watching. The thought made my face heat and my nerves twist. But she had already set a pillow barrier down the middle, making the situation feel less threatening, more respectful. I lay down on my side of the bed, unable to sleep as city lights glowed against the curtains. I listened to her breaths, steady and quiet, and wondered how two people from entirely different worlds ended up here, under one roof, sharing a lie that would define our days. The months that followed were a confusing mixture of stability and chaos. Daytime brought routine, work, school drop-offs, meetings, charity events, endless expectations. But evenings brought a different world. I learned that Kira's mother had passed away unexpectedly, leaving behind a fortune and properties that her extended family wanted to seize. She learned about the loneliness I carried, the fear of failing Jace, the guilt of not being able to shield him from everything he had lost. Somehow, in the quiet moments between responsibilities, we found a strange, fragile comfort in each other's presence. But life doesn't allow borrowed happiness to remain unchallenged. 8 months into the arrangement, her relatives intensified their attacks, hiring investigators to monitor her home, dig into her past, and search for flaws in our story. Every evening felt like walking on thin glass. Every knock on the door sent my heart racing, and through it all, Kira's composure began to crumble. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating enough, stopped believing she could win. The pressure was crushing her spirit, and for the first time since meeting her, I saw tears in her eyes, silent, guarded, unintentional tears that she tried to brush away before anyone noticed. One night, after a particularly aggressive legal meeting, she finally let everything spill out. She confessed that she felt like she'd lived her whole life pretending to be unbreakable, pretending she didn't need anyone, pretending she couldn't be hurt. But now she felt like a child again, lost and grieving her mother all over, and in that moment I realized that despite the contract, despite the arrangement, despite all the lies we had built, my feelings for her had shifted. I no longer saw her as just my boss. I saw her as a woman fighting for her dignity, for her mother's legacy, for the right to live without manipulation. And I wanted to protect her, not because I was paid to, but because I cared. What neither of us expected was how Jace changed everything. He became the quiet glue that held the fractured pieces of our strange little family together. He left drawings taped to Kira's door. He brought her flowers he picked from the rooftop garden. He sat beside her during movie nights and leaned against her shoulder because he said she felt safe. And the way she softened around him, the way her guarded expression melted into genuine warmth, was something I never thought I'd witness. The turning point came when her relatives attempted to force a court hearing to expose our marriage as fraud. They believed they could destroy her credibility, seize control, and humiliate her in the process. The night before the hearing, she sat beside me on the living room floor, her hands trembling as she looked out at the city. She whispered that she didn't want to lose everything her mother worked for. I told her she wouldn't. I told her she wasn't alone anymore. The next day, something extraordinary happened. The judge, after hearing every accusation, turned to us and asked if our marriage was real, not legally but emotionally. And before I could form words, Kira spoke. Her voice didn't waver. She didn't hide behind rehearsed lines or legal phrases. She spoke from a place I never thought she'd allow herself to reveal. She spoke about the home we shared, the routines we built, the trust that grew, and the small moments that changed her. She spoke about Jace. She spoke about me. She didn't claim grand romance or dramatic devotion. She simply spoke the truth, that our lives had intertwined in ways neither of us expected, and that whatever began as an arrangement had transformed into something far deeper. The court ruled in her favor. Her inheritance was secured, her relatives retreated, and as we walked out of that courtroom into the warm daylight, she looked at me with a quiet, grateful ache in her eyes that said more than any words could. But life isn't a fairy tale that ends neatly once the danger fades. The year contract was nearly up. Our arrangement was supposed to end. I was supposed to pack my bags, take my son, and return to the life we had before. But the thought of leaving felt like tearing out a piece of my own heart. Not because of the luxury, not because of the security, but because somewhere along the line, this strange year had woven us into a family, a wounded, healing, imperfect, beautiful family. On the final night of the agreement, I stood alone in the living room, staring at my packed suitcase, while sunlight faded softly through the massive windows. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to see Kira standing there. Not composed, not polished, not the intimidating CEO the world knew. She looked human, soft, afraid. She didn't ask me to stay. She didn't demand anything. She simply said that the home would feel too quiet without us. I didn't know what the future would look like. I didn't know if we would rewrite the contract into something real. But I knew that life had a way of bringing together the most unlikely hearts in the most unlikely moments. And as Jace ran into the room, hugging both of us with that boundless joy only children possess, I realized that maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of whatever story we were brave enough to create. If this story touched your heart today, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Everyday Kindness. Your support helps keep these emotional stories alive. Special request: comment below if you believe that sometimes the most unexpected people become the family we didn't know we needed.